The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
North Carolina fires Mack Brown.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels.
News started breaking. In fact, I first saw it on our chat that Carolina had fired Mack Brown. And look, here's the deal, kind of big picture I wanted to talk about is I think ultimately this is the right decision. I think ultimately Carolina's going about this a weird way, at least with what we know right now. You know, maybe more news comes out, but we'll get there. So here's what I want to do. Very quickly, just get through the details, go through that, talk about it, and then we'll get to some takes and talking points and things that we need to be thinking on moving forward. We'll see if you got some comments or thoughts in the chat, and then we'll get on with our Feast Week Tuesday. It's almost time for Maui Invitational to start back up, wildly enough. So very quickly, the details. North Carolina is 44-32 in Mack Brown 2.0. He's got 113 wins at North Carolina. That's the most ever by a Carolina coach. As a reminder, Coach Brown coached at North Carolina from 1988 through 1997. Came back around about this time in 2018 and has coached since the 2019 season. This is season number 6. Has made a bowl every year. Only one that first year was Sam Howell at the helm, but made obviously the Orange Bowl. And hopefully the Tar Heels can win a bowl this year again. The question will be who's going to be the head coach when that happens. According to Taylor Vipolis from Inside Carolina and his reporting, the Carolina school officials reached this conclusion, this decision on Monday. Mack Brown told the team this morning. From Carolina's own statement about this, Coach Brown will coach the team this Saturday against NC State. You know, that's going to be what was already an emotionally charged game, made all the more so by this news and everything around it. I do want to read, in case you haven't seen it or heard it yet, the statement from Bubba Cunningham and then also the statement from Mack Brown. Bubba says, quote, Mack Brown has won more games than any football coach in UNC history, and we deeply appreciate all that he's done for Carolina football and our university. Over the last 6 seasons, his second campaign in Chapel Hill, he has coached our team to 6 bowl berths, including an Orange Bowl, while mentoring 18 NFL draft picks. He and his wife, Sally, have done an outstanding job supporting the Carolina community, including raising funds for UNC Children's Hospital, while hosting other popular events such as the Ladies' Day Clinic. Both also have been terrific in leading our program during some incredibly tough stretches, including the tragic passing of wide receiver Tylee Kraft this season. Coach Brown has led the Carolina football program back into the national conversation as we improved the program's facilities, significantly increased the size of the staff, invested in salaries, and bolstered our nutrition and strength and conditioning programs. He also has been a dedicated fundraiser, strengthening the football endowment while also supporting our other sports programs. We thank Coach Brown for his dedication to Carolina and wish him, Sally, and their family all the best. That's again from AD Bubba Cunningham. Mack Brown's statement. And this is a read between the lines kind of moment here. Quote, while this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, no time will ever be the perfect time. I've spent 16 seasons at North Carolina and will always cherish the memories and relationships Sally and I have built while serving as head coach. We've had the chance to coach and mentor some great young men, and we'll miss having the opportunity to do so in the future. Moving forward, my total focus is on helping these players and coaches prepare for Saturday's game against NC State and give them the best chance to win. We want to send these seniors out right, and I hope our fans will show up Saturday to do the same, end quote. Mack Brown, classy as you would always expect from him. But man, you read it between the lines right out of the gate. While this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, like as he has said, like as recently as yesterday and had talked about last week, he was in to keep going. And that makes this kind of all the more awkward and painful and weird for us to reckon with. Mack Brown had 3 years left on his contract. The Carolina statement says that will be paid through the athletics department, not through state funds. So that's where we're at with this thing right now. That's the details of it. And then we got to start reckoning with thoughts and fallout and all these kind of things. So I think the News and Observer headline says it very perfectly, and it helps lead into my thoughts on it. The headline is, quote, "Just because UNC had to move on from Mack Brown doesn't make it any easier." And I think that, I said that earlier this season. I think it was after the Georgia Tech loss. It's unfortunate, but it's time. It is time for North Carolina to make this decision. It might have been time last offseason, but it's hard because you want to allow a head coach the magnitude of Mack Brown right off into the sunset under his own terms and conditions, as Roy Williams did, for example, as Anson Dorrance just did, as Karen Shelton recently did for Carolina field hockey, right? Like, you've got all of those sorts of things, and Mack Brown now doesn't get the opportunity to do that. So it's not easy because he is such a good, gregarious man, somebody that people want to be around, somebody that people like, somebody that gets it and understands how to interact with media and do things like that. But that said, just because of all of the personal side you love about Mack Brown doesn't mean you can't pull the trigger on what you should do with the professional side. But where I'm at is that this feels icky and weird and odd to fire Mack Brown right now, rather than allow him to announce that he's retiring. Now, maybe because of his recent statements about wanting to keep going, he might have been behind the scenes. We don't know this yet as I record this. He might have been offered that option by Bubba Cunningham and said, "No, you're going to have to fire me." And if so, then we need to pull back and frame this a different way. But with everything we know right now, this is not a good look to me from the athletic department to handle it this way. That said, I do think the timing of this is good because it allows you to work on a successor in a good time frame. Because one of the big wins you get of making a bowl is those extra weeks of practice ahead of next season. So it's like pre-spring practice, spring practice. And so if Carolina, who I think is very right to have Coach Brown coach Saturday against NC State, but then if you can go ahead and get his successor in, then that person will have multiple weeks to learn his personnel and all of that ahead of the bowl game, which then springboards you into spring practice instead of spring practice being that moment which springboards you into fall practice. So I actually, while I don't like the method and the framing of this, I do like the timing of it a good bit. Another reason I like the timing of it is because it allows you to try to do everything you can to hang on to recruits. There are some that had already been hemorrhaging. For example, literally this morning, Tuesday morning, in the aftermath of this news, 4-star edge Xavion Griffin-Haynes has already announced he's out. He's decommitting from North Carolina. Now, as happens a lot, guys will still reconsider once the new coach is announced. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that, right? Like, will Griffin-Haynes and other recruits come back around to Carolina? We don't know right now, but going ahead and announcing the intention of what's going to happen lets you start figuring some of that out. And let's be honest, Carolina had already been hemorrhaging recruits because of the lack of clarity on the Mack Brown situation. So now we have that clarity, and now young men can make their decisions based on that. So you're going to have some like Xavion Griffin-Haynes saying, "All right, Coach Brown's out, I'm out." But you're going to have others that say, "Okay, now I know, and I'm ready to wait and see who the new guy is, and then maybe I recommit or can reconfirm my commitment." I think this timing is also very helpful with portal movement because Carolina now can start thinking about, okay, what do we need to go get? We already knew there was going to have to be a significant portal haul on the defensive side of the football. And Coach Brown even has recently said that, like, hey, our high school class isn't going to be very big in this class, but our portal class will be. And I think all the more so now because of this personnel change is part of it. So again, it feels very odd to me to fire Mack Brown rather than him resigning. Again, it could be semantics of how Coach Brown wanted to handle it. But also, I think the timing is right. But it's also very weird after Coach Brown's recent comments about, yeah, I'm here. I'm going to go beyond 2024. Even yesterday, telling reporters, quote, I've said I'm going to do it as long as I'm happy, as long as I'm healthy, and as long as I'm effective. I'm not going to think about retiring. I'm not going to talk about retiring, end quote. That's awkward, you guys. Literally yesterday, while Carolina officials were talking about this decision, Mack Brown was saying, no, I'm here. That's painful, right? So again, some weird things, but there you go. However, what I just said about the transfer portal, in the NIL era, we have often seen a change at the head coaching level actually be good for recruiting and for NIL dollars, because there's just something about like the newness that makes donors want to give and contribute and to be part of what's going on. And so look, that could be a possibility for this, is that maybe it brings in, because let's be honest, the fan base wasn't exactly like, yay, feeling great about everything. But when you bring in somebody new, at least the last couple of years, what we've seen across the national landscape at both like football and basketball, like think about John Calipari coming to Arkansas, man, that Arkansas fan base has been galvanized to give and give and give. And obviously they got a lot of money with Tyson and Walmart and all that, whatever. But you just see this when there are changes right now in personnel with head coach.
Game Time has a new feature for your ticket buying experience called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. No one wants to do that. Curation makes it easier to save more, to save time, to save money on concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more near you. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Can the Indiana Hoosiers win the battle for Atlantis?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Need to react to what happened in the college football playoff last night, in the rankings release, that is. And look, we knew Indiana was going to fall, right? We knew we were going to drop a little bit. We knew it was going to be a plummet, I guess, but we didn't know how far they would drop us, right? We didn't know how far we would go. We were at number 5. You lose to Ohio State. And I thought we should still be a college football playoff team. I did. I thought we should still be in the rankings. I thought we should still be in the running. And we are ranked at the 10th seed, right? We're ranked at the 10th spot. But as they have to do every single week, right, as they do every single time, you would think this would be a, telling tale of how the system is kind of broken here, where you have to explain what the rankings mean and why it may not directly reflect what the bracket shows, or I guess vice versa, right? The bracket doesn't directly reflect what the rankings are because of the conference champions, automatic bids, things like that. So as we look at it, I've got the bracket pulled up right here. We are the 10th ranked team in the country. When you see us on TV this Saturday, or you see us in an article, we will be ranked number 10. But we're actually the 11th seed, going on the road to Happy Valley playing Penn State. And I just want to say this. I love it. Give us Penn State. Give us Happy Valley. We need something to, get back to, right? We need something to make up for the Ohio State performance. And I've told you how I feel about Penn State. I'm not convinced. I'm not sold. I think they're getting way too much love for just not a whole lot of success this season. So give me Penn State and Happy Valley absolutely as the 10th ranked team in the country. We would be the 11th seed playing at the 6th seed, the Penn State Nittany Lions, right? 1 seed is Oregon, 2 seed Texas, 3 seed Miami, 4 seed Boise State. You'd have Arizona as the 12 going to Ohio State, and Columbus, Tennessee going to Georgia, Indiana going to Penn State, SMU going to Notre Dame. I'm kind of surprised that they're not trying to avoid big-time conference games, whether they're rematches or not, especially early. Like, it's going to be hard at times. I get that, but I don't know. I just figured they would try to avoid that. I mean, Tennessee, Georgia is a huge game. Indiana, Penn State is a huge game. Like, you're talking 2 of the best in the SEC versus 2 of the best in the Big Ten. Like, that's legit. I guess 2 of the best in the SEC against each other and 2 of the best in the Big Ten against each other. Like, that's some serious business. And so, look, all things considered, right? All things considered, we are still in the playoff. This tells us everything we need to know. This tells us if you beat Purdue, you are in. Talking about us in Indiana. If we beat Purdue, we are in. Because I don't think there's enough chaos that can happen in front, behind, around, whatever, for us to drop completely out, right? Because let's be real. If Oregon loses, doesn't matter. If Ohio State loses, doesn't really matter, right? I think they're still both going to be okay, right? Penn State could win against Maryland. They could get to a Big Ten championship game. Like, there's all sorts of crazy math here, but I'm just saying Tennessee could lose, but we would move up. Georgia could lose, but we would move up. Notre Dame could lose, but we would move up. I don't see anything happening below us to where we would get jumped and left out in the cold. Now we're flirting with it. And we absolutely could talk about South Carolina. You could talk about Clemson, right? 2 teams that are currently on the outside looking in, but could gain a big time win this weekend as a top 15 matchup. And Indiana doesn't have one of those. So that is a little scary. There ain't no doubt. That's very, very scary. Plus conference championship games and things like that. So there's a lot here to break down. And we're going to do this more as the weekend, we get closer to the weekend and into next week's playoff rankings, right, with the holiday coming up. But here's what we know. As of right now, yes, we got punished for a loss, as you should, but we're still alive in the college football playoff. And I can't believe it, but I think we might be okay. If we beat Purdue, we might just be okay. If there's not just complete chaos behind us, which there very well could be. But I like what I see here. I like what I'm seeing and hearing so far. If we take care of business, we should be okay. Is that going to be the case? I don't know, because you still have teams like Alabama who are on the outside looking in. Again, if Notre Dame loses, they're still going to find a way for them to be in against USC, even though that game is this week, right? You just have all these different scenarios where Indiana could be given the short end of the stick. But from what they've told us, we're okay for now, but we got to handle business against Purdue coming up this weekend.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You could take an early look at some Thanksgiving football lines. The Lions are massive favorites in their first game of the day against the Bears. FanDuel has Detroit laying 10.5. Kind of like the Bears. Is that weird? FanDuel also doesn't feel like Caleb Williams and company will put up a lot of points. The Bears total over-under set at 18.5. I might take the over and the Bears to cover. I bet I can get some nice plus odds on that. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Kansas beats Duke 75-72 as they show.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So the Jayhawks end up winning by 3 despite not having Hunter Dickinson for the final 10-ish minutes of the game. This was a game about 2 things to me. The experienced veterans of Kansas and mainly the returners, right? KJ Adams, Hunter Dickinson, that it was about Hunter in a different way in this game, and DeJuan Harris, along with the depth that you acquired in the transfer portal, paying off in a real way in this one. Okay, let's think about those in two ways. One, KJ Adams had a phenomenal game for KU. He missed those last couple jump shots, which were kind of like, oh no, what are those shots? But he's also hitting them throughout the game. And, it was something where he had such a big impact on the defensive end of the court. DeJuan Harris had a phenomenal game doing everything for you, pressuring the ball, nearly had a double-double, played 36 minutes and was still looking spry through the end of the game. It was about your veterans in that way, but it was also about the depth you acquired. Last year, Hunter Dickinson gets ejected with 10 minutes to go. Kansas is done. Pack it up, right? Fold it up, right? It's over, especially against the tallest team in the country. But because you have Flory Badunga, right? It's not all transfer portal. Some of it's freshmen. Because you have Flory Badunga, you're able to survive that game at the very end. Because you have Ryland Griffin coming off the bench in the second half and hitting some big shots, you're able to survive that game. Because you have Diggy Coit coming in and hitting a key three for you in the second half, you're able to win that game. This game was about those two things. The key returning starters that KU brought back from last year and filling it, supplanting it with the players you made the additions of in the portal. And it's not perfect right now. They're still figuring each other out. They're still figuring out the roles, right? You're still figuring out everything that you want to be as a team. But there was a little post-game moment where Chris Budden was interviewing Bill Self, and he was kind of smiling. He has the big smile on his face, as you'd imagine, because they just beat Duke by 3 points. And he's got this big smile on his face, and he's like, and we're still figuring stuff out. And I think it was a light bulb moment probably for him, like, man, we got a pretty good team. We've already beaten North Carolina, Duke, and Michigan State, and we're still figuring it out. And we didn't have Hunter Dickinson for the final 10 minutes. Like, in the back of his head, he's going, I have something special here. Let's make the most out of this thing. And I think the crazy thing to me as a part of all of this is that, you'll be able to point to this one and clearly, like, if you're a Duke fan, there's no shame in losing a game like this, as there wouldn't have been any shame if Kansas would have ended up losing this game in a close game, right? Love games like this. It's going to help both teams down the road and everything. Obviously, Duke's going to sit here probably and say, well, listen, we almost won this game, and we only got 13 points from Cooper Flagg, who was shut down in the first half, and Con Canuple only had, was 4 of 14. This A game easily. But that's the thing you can do with Kansas in this game. This wasn't even a situation where it's like, okay, well, yeah, Kansas was hot from three. They were 8 of 17, 47%, but that's not super high volume. And it's not like Duke wasn't hot from three either. They were 11 of 26. Like, Tyrese Proctor could not miss. So you can't really point to that. And that's even with like there were some good looks for David Coit. The second one that he missed was actually probably a better look than the first one he made. Ryland Griffin had a couple other good looks. Like, you easily could have made another 1 or 2 threes in this game. The 16 turnovers, like, that's something where you can point to if you're Kansas and Bill Self and be like, okay, well, if, down the road, we'd expect to not have that many turnovers. I think you can also point to down the road that, okay, well, you would hope Hunter Dickinson wouldn't get ejected again, and that, that could be better out of this game too. And on top of it, in the minutes Hunter Dickinson played, he was really struggling on the offensive end of the court, right? He missed the dunk. He was 4 for 11. He had 3 turnovers. That's the cool part about this, that Kansas won this game, and there's still a lot of things you could point to and be like, oh, but they're going to improve at that, or they're going to be better at that, or this is going to get right. We still haven't really seen Shaq Moore factor into the rotation. Maybe that's something that just never happens, but I kind of think it will. It's just tough to go from, oh, you've been on a 5-minute per game limit to now all of a sudden you're going to play in our hardest game of the season against Duke, right? So there are a lot of tangible reasons that Kansas can get better from a team that already has these 3 gigantic non-conference wins. This was an excellent defensive game for KU. Obviously the offense was good too. You shoot 50% on twos against a Duke team that has all sorts of length. You shoot 47% from 3. You had a ton of assists in this game. You were money at the free throw line, right? You won the game doing everything. You don't beat a team like this just doing nothing, but you held them without any field goals over the final 2 minutes and 29 seconds of the game. You made them uncomfortable. You forced 16 turnovers. You had 12 steals. You had 4 blocks in the game. The ball pressure, I was really impressed with KU. The first half specifically, you were doing a good job keeping them out of the paint. And so, yes, Duke ends up shooting 50% from the floor and 42% from 3. But I look at this game and I look at KU leading 21-15 in points off turnovers. I look at you keeping them to just 5 offensive rebounds. And I sit there and go, yeah, I mean, Duke just made some good threes, and Cooper Flagg had a couple like really good plays where he just made like, that runner, or he had like that one dunk over Floyd Badunga. Like, I don't know. I just felt like Duke had some good offensive moments. I don't think it was that KU was like bad on defense. I thought this was a good defensive game for KU. Other notes from this game before we get into our game awards. AJ Storr ended up starting the game. Now, I don't know if that was specific for the matchup for KU, thinking that, hey, Duke is this ginormous team. AJ Storr is a little bit more built than a guy like Rylan Griffin, gives you a little bit more size out there. I like to think of it as, okay, you had a week off between games. There was a lot of practices. He probably did well in those practices. Now, what's interesting, though, is AJ Storr did not finish the game. Part of that was because Rylan Griffin earned to finish the end of the game because he was playing well in that second half. And AJ Storr was better in the first half than he was in the second half for KU. He wound up with 8 points in the first half, 3 of 6 shooting. In the second half, he had 3 points. He only took 1 shot. So, he was so fine in the second half, but the first half was what he was more known for. But I think that's a good sign for KU that AJ Storr ended up starting, because, again, that probably means he was doing really well in practice and is showing the things that Bill Self wants him to show to earn that spot. And I think AJ Storr is one of the most talented players on this team. So if he's fulfilling what Bill Self wants him to do, that is a very good sign for KU. Another note that I want to make mention of, we talked about this in the takeaways, Kansas needed to find something to increase their like possession maximization, right? You don't have to do great at everything, but what are you going to do good at? Are you going to get more steals? Are you going to get more offensive? Well, you got more steals, you got 12 of them, and you got 10 offensive rebounds, while you were able to hold Duke to 5 offensive rebounds. That is the value of Kansas being able to win more possessions. That, you have to find a way to win on the margins in some of these ways, and Kansas did that in a very real way in this game. And, when you look at it, like Hunter Dickinson had 2 offensive rebounds, Flory had 2 offensive rebounds. Like, those are the guys you're kind of looking at to be able to do that. And then it was really everybody pitching in on the steals. We've had some other games where it's like just Hunter and DeJuan getting steals, but I think everybody in your starting lineup got at least 1 steal. You had 2 players off the bench get a steal. You had 3 players with multiple steals in this game. Like, just really good stuff from KU overall. So bottom line here, I think you've kind of proven you are a deserving number 1 team. I think there were some questions about, okay, we think Kansas is really good, maybe from the national perspective, right? But are they really number 1? And even I've had some of those questions where it's like, okay, I think Kansas is a really good team, but are they number 4? Are they number 5? Or are they number 1? And I think you look at some of the metric sites and maybe it had them closer to being in that camp than being number 1. And you have some of these other teams winning big games. Like, I don't know, maybe Auburn is the best team in the country. They're winning all these big games. But now you can't really question it until Kansas loses a game, or unless they have like a streak of bad play, right? Like, I mean, if for the next couple of weeks you're playing, not as good opponents and you're barely winning every game, like then, yeah, sure, we can question it then. But like, until you lose a game outside of that, you have collected wins over North Carolina, Michigan State, and Duke. You can't really question the resume right now, right? Like they are knocking down gigantic wins. You have proven you were a deserving number 1 team in the country right now. And while you're still working on things that we just talked about, like if there's reason for things to get even better, you've shown you can beat anyone in the country. And this is why you went out and made sure you had depth in the offseason to overcome a situation like this. Maybe in your wildest dreams, you didn't think Hunter Dickinson was going to get ejected, but was there always a possibility when you're talking about a center that he could have fouled out of a random game? Absolutely. And now you feel a lot better that if later in the season, let's say we get to an NCAA tournament game, let's say you're in the second round and you get a bad whistle and Hunter Dickinson's in foul trouble all game, or he does end up fouling out of a game. Don't you feel a little bit better being able to go back to this game and lean on it and be like, yeah, it's not ideal, not the best thing in the world, but we trust Flory and we trust the bench and yada, 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 that they're going to be able to have enough to win a game, and to win a game like that. Really impressive stuff for this KU team.